In this video, we're going to be talking about the topic of debunking the myths of online counseling. We'll begin the first few minutes of our video looking at this topic. We'll also want to pay attention today on two other important topics which are extremely important, looking at the advantages and disadvantages of using counseling in an online environment. It's our hope that these videos will help you to better understanding the truth and the false things when it comes to doing counseling online. The first myth that we want to spend some time looking at is it says that online therapy is impossible. I believe some of the people who believe in this ideology will basically tell you that face-to-face counseling is the only way that you can really reach a client. Now, in a traditional sense, this would be true because that was the only way we had of reaching our clients is doing it face-to-face. But with technologies changing the way they are right now, and more studies coming out on the effectiveness of online counseling, I believe the online therapy is very possible. That regardless if we're talking about people who struggle with drug addictions or other problems in their life, they're able to turn to the internet and other technologies to receive the counseling they think is important for them. And so this is something that we will continue to see growth in. We've seen growth in this area for several years now. And so this fact is simply, this myth is simply not true. That when we think about online therapy, this is something we're going to see continue to grow as technologies continue to grow. And as therapists are trained in this manner, we're going to see more and more people go to online therapy. Now, I do, however, caution you from thinking that all therapy in the future will be done online. I think traditional face-to-face therapy is something that will always be here. I believe that's how our profession was begun. I believe it will always be an important part of our profession. But online therapy is something that will only benefit that and not cause harm to it. And so this simply is not true that online therapy is impossible. Also, there's a belief that online therapy consists almost exclusively of email exchanges. Now, in its infancy period, there were several therapists out there who were doing online therapy exclusively from email. They would receive a question from a client, they would respond to that question, and they would email back and forth with their clients. Now, this would not be the primary way that I would personally prefer to see counseling happening, but this is only one of many ways in which it can be done. We are seeing therapists now who are using technology such as Skype or Uvu, which are video-based chats, where they're able to see face-to-face with their clients even though they're not in the same room or even in the same state. And so that point alone will help us to see that you can do online therapy outside of email exchanges. There's also ways, what we call just a simple chat room, where you can set up something like Yahoo Messenger or something to that effect, and you can send messages back and forth to your clients at the same time. And at this point, you can have a conversation through the use of the internet. And as we go throughout this training, we'll talk a little bit more later on about the different methods of doing counseling online, even through the use of a telephone. But once again, this does extend out beyond the use of simply having an email account. Also, there are rumors or been myths that text only is inadequate to convey a richness of human experience. That some people feel like just written expression of your emotions and feelings is not an adequate way to be able to express yourself. But one thing we're beginning to see in some of the studies that are coming out, there is a terminology called the disinhibition effect. And basically what the disinhibition effect says to us is that when someone is online, when they're not face to face with someone, they begin to have their guards come down. That's something that I would not normally say to someone face to face. It will be easy for me to be able to say that over online because of my perceived anonymity. I feel like no one's there. I feel like I don't have a face, and because of that, I may have be a lot more open to saying whatever I feel like I need to a person. And so the text-only format, if you only did counseling that way, I believe you could benefit your clients there, and I do believe it is adequate. It is a rich way of being able to express themselves. In the same way a therapist would ask a client to maybe write a letter to a deceased loved one, or to be able to express themselves in a journal, they find themselves being able to freely talk about things going on in their life. And so if someone decided they wanted to do text-only type of counseling, it would be an adequate way of doing this, even though there are other manners out there to be considered. Also, it says that suicide prevention and crisis intervention are impossible online. Once again, we look at this as being a myth. I think a better way of wording this is that suicide prevention and crisis intervention are more difficult, but not impossible. I believe a ethical therapist, before they will begin an online relationship, they will find out exactly where their clients live to get all the contact information that is possible, to go ahead and know where the local authorities are in that city, and to have the information first before beginning that counseling relationship with their client. I believe if a therapist will do this ethically and find out exactly the information they need, that they would be able to find out and help out their clients in any situation they are in. And so, for example, if I had a client who was threatening suicide or homicide or basically in a crisis situation, I could see a therapist being able to use technology such as Skype or whatever the case may be to continue to video chat with their client and then be able to call the authorities on the other line or to make sure the resources are there for their client. And so once again, even though this may be difficult, even though this may not be something that people are used to, I think suicide prevention and crisis intervention are possible in an online environment if the therapist takes their time to find out where the clients are and to get the necessary information that is possible. And so, in the same sense, if I'm seeing a face to face client as I am an online client, I believe the process of getting information will be just about the same. But once again, having that in your reach at all times will be very important. And so, for me, this would not be a major concern if if the therapist takes the steps necessary to get their client the help that they need. And so, this would not be something that will keep me from doing internet based counseling. Also, another myth that we see is that effective online counseling for serious disorders is not possible. Once again, I believe there's some falsehood attached to this statement because first of all, being able to define what is a serious disorder. I could really see using internet-based counseling in lots of different ways. Maybe you have a client who is not ready to leave outside their home because of a trauma that they have experienced. And so being able to talk with them over the phone or either through email or even through a video type chat may be one way of engaging with this client in order to get them to eventually come into an office setting. And so just to simply say that if the using online counseling is not going to help serious disorders, I believe we end up cutting out some serious opportunities for ourselves as therapists. Once again, we want to make sure that the clients we have are appropriate for this type of training and for this type of counseling. We'll spend a little bit time later on in training talking specifically what is the best type of client for this. But once again, I wouldn't necessarily purposely omit someone just because I'm using online counseling. And so I think, once again, an ethical therapist will sit down and look at the disorder the client is looking at, try to find out the client's computer skills, things of that nature, and see is this the right type of environment for that client. And if it ends up being the right environment for the client, then I would say go ahead and use that. But using counseling online could be a very proper way of making sure our clients get the help that they need. Another myth we see here is that geography doesn't matter when providing mental health services online. This is a topic we will bring up several times throughout this training because of the importance in it. In the ethics section, we'll speak about this in a little bit more detail. One thing that is troubling to me as a therapist is if I go online to maybe go to Google, things of that nature, you see people all over the world talking about the online counseling services they provide. They'll give you the information about where they're licensed, things of that nature, if they have a license, but they really never get into this fact of talking about whether or not they can offer these services across state lines. It is of utmost importance for both the client and therapist to know the state laws of where they reside and also where their counselor resides to find out if online counseling is something that they can be a part of. For example, in the state of Arkansas, Anyone who wants to do counseling through online matters, first of all, must have a specialization license in that area, and they must take the proper testing for that. And the client must also realize that the scope of practice that this therapist is doing, that they're licensed to be able to do that. And so, even if someone is a client is in the state of Arkansas and the therapist is outside the state of Arkansas, that counseling is still deemed to have happened in Arkansas. So, for example, if you have a therapist who lives in California and he's wanting to counsel someone in the state of Arkansas, that therapist must make sure they have the proper licenses for the state of Arkansas. As far as the research that I've done so far, right now Arkansas is the only state that I know of that is currently asking for licenses in this area. But once again, if you're doing this training, if you plan on providing services across state lines or with a therapist, with a client in another state, make sure you are licensed to do that and make sure your state board knows that you're trying to do these services through an online basis. And so you want to make sure this is something you spend time looking into. Also, this next statement reads, online clinical work always involves one counselor or therapist working with individuals in groups. I think the great thing about the technology that we have right now is that because of the new technology we're seeing coming out, especially like things like Skype or Uvu, we're able to have more than one therapist working with a group at the same time. Imagine, if you will, if you have a therapist who lives in one part of the state, another therapist who's in another part of the state, and a group meeting that's in a third part of the state. Because of the technologies that we have, you could have more than one therapist online with the same group of people through the use of video type chat. And so the good thing about this is we're able to see more and more opportunities are coming available because we see the fact that technology is bringing us together. It's giving us opportunities that we have never seen before because of certain video-based counseling and because of the internet. And so clinical work no longer has to be just one person with one therapist. It doesn't have to be one therapist with one group of people. More and more people can be brought into the fold. More and more people can reach these services because of internet-based technology and counseling. And so for me, this is a great encouragement that we see here, that the more time we spend doing and more time we do research in this area, the better opportunities we see for our clients. And that's really what we're about here, is making sure our clients are getting the best care. Also, this next statement tells us that online principles are the same as offline principles. And once again, this statement is false. Most therapists have been trained in offline type principles. We all have our different theories that we work from. You have some who would be cognitive behavioral therapists, things of that nature, and those theories are very important to the makeup and viewpoint in which the therapist is going to be working from. But the reality is, just because someone is good at face-to-face counseling, if they don't have the proper training or are not ready to do counseling in an online environment, those same principles they use face-to-face may not and could probably actually be worse in a situation in which they're doing something online. And so it's going to be extremely important for someone who is wanting to venture into this area, who's wanting to get the certifications to do this type of training, they spend some good time looking and finding out from people who are already involved in this and seeing what the differences are. And that is one purpose of this video, is to give you some of these advantages and some of these disadvantages. That way you can make a knowledgeable decision on whether or not this is something that you choose to do down the road. And so the principles you learn here online will work well online, and once again, some of these things may not work offline. And so when we think about things such as empathy, things of that nature, those things can be transferable skills. But once again, some skill sets that are built specifically for offline will not work for those who work online. Also, it says online training and peer supervision are ineffective. Once again, I would say this is false. One thing we're seeing, especially in counselor education, we're seeing more and more people who are getting their degrees online. And so being able to get training for this type of counseling is available from an academic setting online or continuing education formats online as well. And the ability to have peer supervision, once again, is extremely effective once you use internet-based counseling. Once again, imagine being a supervisee for the first time and having your supervisor, who may be in a different part of the state, be able to go to their laptop computer, turn on their web camera, and be able to watch you in session as you give counsel to your clients. Imagine the abilities and the advantages you would have to have someone there guiding you step by step through your session, because they're able to see you in action. There's no waiting on for you to make a DVD of this to watch later on. They can watch and take notes and talk to you throughout the entire session to help be a guide to you as a part of that developmental process that we call supervision. And so once again, with greater technology that we continue to see come out, the more opportunities it's providing in online training and peer supervision, and we're seeing that this has been effective. And also, the last statement says here that any clinician experienced in face-to-face work can do online work. Once again, we've talked about this just a little bit already. That there are some people who have been doing face-to-face therapy for years, who are probably extremely competent in face-to-face counseling because of their technology understanding, or because of their use of computers, or maybe just because of their own self-confidence, may not be able to do anything in an online environment. Now, this does not mean that you're not a good therapist. This does not mean that you're not worth your weight as a therapist. It simply means that this technology, or this new technology that we're trying to work through, may not be something that you're able to understand or fits the clientele that you're working in. And so, just like any other type of counseling or any other specialization that you have, you want to make sure you get the right type of training and make sure it's going to help benefit the clients that you're working with. And so I caution anyone who is interested in doing online counseling or using internet-based counseling to once again make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons to help your clients, and make sure it's something that you're comfortable in. That way your services you provide for your clients will be something that is ethical, that is professional, and will cause great growth for those people that you're working with. Now we want to change gears for a few minutes here and look at some of the advantages of technology-assisted counseling. Why are some people choosing to use technology-assisted counseling over traditional face-to-face counseling? One of the first reasons we see here is an access of services to an underserved populations. Now more than ever, we're seeing once again a growth of people in our nation, a growth of people in the world. And because of things like technology-assisted counseling, we're able to help out people with counseling services who would not otherwise be able to have these services. Imagine someone who's living in a rural area, who their closest therapist is between 45 minutes to an hour away. Imagine the time that they will have to spend driving to the therapist to see them, to get in there to see the therapist, and then to drive back, and they'll end up having a lot of time that is wasted. Now those people who are not able to have therapy have an opportunity to receive it because their therapist is able to provide services through the use of technology. And once again, I think this is the reason why I'm so passionate about seeing therapists find out more about this area of counseling to get the proper training for it. Because the more therapists we have equipped in this area, the more people that can be served. Maybe you have a building that's not necessarily that's handicap accessible, or accessible for those who are disabled. Once again, using technology-assisted counseling will give you more opportunity to reach out to the lives of those people who are hurting your community and the world around you. And so I'm going to be a staunch advocate for technology-assisted counseling because it gives services to people who otherwise would not be able to receive it. Also, we look at the flexibility of time. That because of using technology-assisted counseling, it gives us an opportunity to use our time a lot wiser and to be better stewards of our time. I know one of the great difficulties I've always found in private practice is asking myself the question, how do I have time to see all of my clients? What this technology-assisted counseling does, it gives us more availability to our clients. Imagine a world which we are able to be in right now, where your clients can send you an email and you'll be able to respond through that to help them with their problems at any time of the day. Imagine if you have gone out of town and your client has a emergency coming up and you want to be able to speak with them and be able to see them face to face. Once again, because of technology assisted counseling, you have the flexibility of time to be able to do that. The time now has no boundaries. That zip codes and area codes, once again, hopefully will be able to change somewhat now because of technology assisted counseling. And so I see a great flexibility of time as a therapist that you can save because of using technology in your counseling. Also, another great advantage of technology assisted counseling is it does not have to occur in real time. Later on in this training, we'll spend a little bit of time looking at email counseling, talking about how you can use email to be able to stay in contact with your clients in between sessions, whether it's for a counseling session or if you're simply just trying to do some homework and follow up your client. That normally they will have to call, to make an appointment with you to come in to do that, where now we're able to do some of these things over the internet. Where you may have a video or something that you want your client to watch and give you feedback on. Now you can do these things in between sessions or as part of a session because of the use of technology. And so once again, you're able to do some of your counseling techniques and skills even though you're not meeting face to face with your client at the exact same time. Also, we see what we call decreased client defensiveness due to perceived anonymity. We talked about that a little bit a few minutes ago, that disinhibition effect. That once again, because someone is in an online environment, we end up seeing their defensiveness go down. Once again, I may not be able to say something to you face to face, but because of the internet, because of me feeling there's a separation between me and you at that time, sometimes my guard is now being put down even more. I'm feeling a lot more relaxed, and things I normally would not say, I'm able to say now. And so imagine now trying to join with this client, being able to get down deep to the problems they want to deal with. Now we can see hopefully save a little bit of time getting to the bottom issue with our clients, because they seem to be a lot more inclined to telling you what you need to know about the life they're going through. And so once again, this perceived anonymity helps our clients out so much that they can get to the issues they feel like they need to get to. They're able to talk to you about the things they need to talk to, and that way we save time with them, and we help them to get to get through the problems or solutions dealt with as quickly as we possibly can. Also, we see that privacy leads to less counseling-related stigma. Being a therapist for approximately 8 years now, one thing I've seen quite a bit with clients is that there were people who will not come in for counseling because of the stigma that's attached with counseling. And I think that's something that is slowly beginning to change in our society, but there are some people out there who simply will not go into a counseling office because simply they want to have privacy. They don't want their neighbor knowing that they needed to have some type of services to help them through the problem that they are. And so what ends up happening is these people who need counseling suffer in silence. The depression that they're dealing with or the anxiety that's overtaken their life, they continue to go day by day without talking to anyone whatsoever to help them with their problem. What technology assisted counseling does, it gives them an opportunity to be able to receive the counseling service they need in the privacy of their own home. Now they don't have to leave the house. Now they don't have to venture out and can still get the same type of mental health services they've always desired, and effective ones at that. And so because of this having privacy, this will be one drawing point for many people. That now the ones who traditionally would not have asked for help or traditionally would have not have went out and got counseling, they'll begin to be a lot more open to it because they can do it from their home, their privacy is maintained, and they're getting the help that they need. Another advantage we see of technology-assisted counseling is the ease of documenting sessions. When we get into the section of our training about the different technologies that are out there, we'll spend some time looking at some of the technology we can use to record sessions. Obviously, because of ethical reasons, we will have to alert our clients and let them get their signed permission to realize that we are assigned to recording their sessions. But I believe, especially when we think about such things as Uvu, where we can record the counseling sessions, or record the audio portion of the sessions. This helps keeping documentation easy for us. That way, when questions come up about our sessions or we need to go back and look over our notes, we can have the entire session documented and archived. That way, if we have anything we need to know, we can go back to that at a later time. And so this ease of documenting sessions is something I think is a benefit for all of us. Another thing we see here is that the increased popularity of social networks is driving more people to be more comfortable with communicating online. It's just several years ago we had this thing called MySpace come out, and now a very popular site that many people go through is Facebook. You see people on Facebook spending time communicating with each other, sending notes back and forth, and seeing them build relationships in the online environment. And this is something where this is not something just for younger people. You see people well into their 70s and 80s who are now feeling a lot more comfortable online because of social networks. And so the idea here is that since I'm comfortable enough to make friends online or comfortable enough to communicate online through something like Facebook, being able to get counseling may be something I will have my eyes open to because we're getting more and more used to that. And so as technologies continue to develop, as people begin to get more Twitter accounts, spend more time on Facebook, different places like that, what it ends up doing is making and normalizing getting on online environments and using them to get help in that way. And so I believe the more and more we see people see popularity being growing in these social networks, the more people we're going to see thinking it using technology assisted counseling. Also, I think another reason we have this technology assisted counseling is it increases our flexibility of services. Now, I do want to put a caution here before we get any further. I believe there are some people out there who may be thinking already that they're going to start an entire practice of only doing online counseling. Recently, American Counseling Association had an article discussing this topic, and the warning there is that you don't want to do this exclusively online. That you wouldn't want to simply have an entire practice online because you have some of the same problem with face-to-face counseling as you would online counseling. And so at least the viewpoint I'm looking for in this training is that I think that online counseling or technology assisted counseling is a great tool to use, but it is a tool. That I will use it as one of many services that I provide. In my own private practice of Renewed Vision Counseling Services, I continue to see people face to face. I do, however, see people online as well. And so I like being able to have this flexibility to see my client online or face to face and being able to offer counseling in more than one environment. And so I think as we continue once again to see technology grow, this gives us more flexibility in what we're able to offer. But once again, I would not use this exclusively by itself. Also, lower cost to practitioner a client. Once again, imagine how much gas we are spending driving back and forth to counseling sessions, or the amount of money we're paying to keep these practices open, things of that nature. As we go through and talk about technology a little bit later on and some of the software you can use on your computer, some of the things we're looking at are very inexpensive when it comes to running an online practice and making that a part of what you're doing. And so as a therapist, I really do believe if we can save some money on our end, being able to offer service to our client, then we can hopefully lower some of our costs as well and be able to pass it on to our clients so that more people are able to receive services at a better rate if that's at all possible. And so I believe technology assisted counseling once again does that because as my costs go down, I would like to be able to pass those on to my clients as well. Another thing we see that advantage of technology assisted counseling is the cathartic nature of email therapy. Once again, there are some therapists out there who do a lot of therapy through email. I think one of the benefits that we'll see from this is that once again, as a person has the ability to express themselves through written word and to get off things on their chest, whether it's writing a long letter or something of that sort, or maybe it's a poem or something of that effect, it's giving them an ability to work through some of the emotions and problems they see in their life. And so once again, this is not for everything. This is not a one-size-fits-all therapy. But I believe for some clients, being able to express themselves through an email or through written word gives them the catharsis in life to help them to move on with some of the problems they're dealing with. And so I believe this is one way that technology assisted counseling can be used to benefit our clients. Also, another advantage we see here is the availability of a wide variety of online support groups. You have groups such as Alcoholics Anonymous, or you go to psychcentral.com, places like that, and you see the availability of so many different type of online support groups. And so in between my sessions, I will be able to direct my clients to one of these support groups to help benefit them in counseling. And once again, as I'm able to use this technology assisted counseling and be able to help hook my clients up with the information they need, I'll be able to have some opportunities before them they never have been able to see before. Imagine being able to sit with a client and watch a video with them on YouTube or a place like that to help them deal with some of the emotions they're dealing with. Or to be able to use something like Netflix or a technology like that to help watch a movie with them and process through things with them. Once again, these different type of support groups and support networks are available online, and it just adds to the practice we have with our face-to-face clients. And so I, for one, am very excited about the possibilities of technology-assisted counseling, and these are just a few of the advantages that we want to look at today. Now, with any great thing that you look at, there's always going to be two sides to the story. We've spent a few minutes already looking at some of the myths. We've talked about the advantages, and now I think it's very fair for us to look at some of the disadvantages of technology-assisted counseling. That there are a few things that we might want to make sure we take note of, because there may be some difficulties that we can face if we want to try to provide counseling with technology. Well, the first thing we see here is the difficulty of determining the qualifications of online therapists. As of right now, there is not a national standard when it comes to getting your license online to be able to counsel online. So this does become very difficult. The National Board of Certified Counselors, they have a lot to say about this topic. They have ethical ramifications and guidelines that they present, and we'll look at those in the ethics section. But when it comes to qualifications, there's lots of mixed reviews on that. We will talk a little bit later on in our training about some of the ideal characteristics of online therapists, some things that you can do to prepare yourselves to do online therapy. But when it comes to looking at qualifications, sometimes consumers of these services are at a loss. Where can they go to find out exactly what type of training the therapist is going to have? What should they be looking for in their therapist? And because once again, there's not a national regulations on that, or does consumers end up suffering more than anyone else in this field? Another thing we see here is problems ensuring confidentiality of sensitive information disclosed in online counseling sessions. One of the ethical concerns we're always going to have with our clients is privacy and confidentiality. We're going to spend some time in the ethics section talking a little about the different technologies that you can use and how to make sure they're encrypted and things of that nature. But the problem we see with this whole environment, especially even with face-to-face counseling as well, that it is impossible in any shape, form, or fashion to make sure you have 100% keeping confidentiality at all times. I think one thing that the therapists have to make sure they look into is that on my end, at least when it comes to my records, I do everything that's humanly possible and technology possible to protect information on my end, but the client has a role in that as well. For example, on my end, I can use encrypted emails, accounts to contact my clients. When I use Skype, Uvu, things of that nature, I can make sure those things are encrypted as well. But if the client is not keeping their own passwords and things on their computer safe, someone on their end can end up finding out and the stuff that we've talked about online if they're not careful. And so once again, in the informed consent that I get my clients to sign at the beginning of our session, before we begin, I want them to realize that confidentiality is extremely important to me as a therapist, because ethically and professionally I want to make sure they feel safe in the information that they give to me. But I want them to understand their role and their responsibility in this as well. That they have to realize that a part of their confidentiality could be broken on their end if they don't take care to keep their own information private. And so when it comes to online counseling, confidentiality and privacy truly is a two-way street. Another thing that we also see that could happen, especially if you're talking about email type counseling, is a lack of spontaneity. There can be times in my sessions and face-to-face I may get an idea that comes to my mind that I want to try with my clients. And so being able to do some things at the spur of the moment is something I'm able to use as a therapist. Maybe there's a story or something that's come to my mind, and I want to be able to use that example to help guide my client and helping them to make some good decisions. And so in a face-to-face environment or even video type of counseling, those opportunities will come, and I want to be able to take advantage of them. But if I'm doing email-based counseling, it will lack spontaneity. I may send an email to the client, get another idea later on, and have to go back and resend it to them or have a change of mind. And so that we do lose some spontaneity in that realm. And so for some people, this could end up being a problem. And so if you're a therapist who's pretty quick on your feet and you want to be able to use some spontaneity in your therapy, using email therapy through the use of technology may not be the best use of that talent. Also, we see the danger that online counseling may increase the likelihood of internet addiction. We see and we realize today, because we have so many different things these days, as we mentioned with Facebook and other websites, that people are spending a lot more time online. I've heard cases before of people spending 40 and 50 hours a week through online gaming websites, things of that nature, whether it's watching pornography. And so a lot of time is being spent online already. And so by me providing technology assisted counseling through the use of the internet specifically, I could be feeding my clients addiction. And so once again, that would be one of the screening tools or one of the screening questions I would ask of my client before we begin the whole counseling process. Find out how comfortable they are online, how much time are they spending online already. And if they're spending several hours a week, and if it seems like their online use is something that is problematic, then maybe as a therapist I want to spend some time maybe looking at some other routes of giving them the counseling that they need. This may mean for them that they may be limited to maybe once or twice a month in an online environment. It may mean that we will have to do all of our sessions face to face. And so we want to make sure that in our pursuit of doing what's right for our clients and doing what's best for them, that we don't end up harming them or hurting them. And so ethically as a professional, I want to make sure and find out, is using counseling online going to harm my client? Also, the need for basic computer literacy skills is going to be extremely important. Now, as we'll go through technology training a little bit later on in this training, one thing I will talk to you about is some of the different skills you need as a therapist. On the flip side of that, we want to look and see what type of skills do our clients need in order to access the services. And so if my client is not very comfortable using the computer whatsoever, this may not be something they want to be involved in. And so some basic computer literacy skills are things that they need to be able to have some expertise in. And so things simply as sending emails and being able to answer email may be an area they need to grow in. Do they know how to use web cameras, things of that nature, that type of computer hardware? That may be something we want to be able to show them. Do they know how to reboot their computer if something was to happen, their computer shuts down accidentally? Are they comfortable enough being able to do things like that? There may be times where the computer needs software updates. Are your clients familiar enough with their computer to be able to do that? Believe it or not, there are still people out there who have dial-up internet services, even as late as with all other technology we have out there. And so, if their internet speed is not fast enough, if they're not using some type of high-speed internet services, will you be able to use things like Skype and Uvu, things of that nature, to be able to connect with your clients? And so there is going to be some threshold of understanding when it comes to technology that your clients will need to have. And so if your clients are able to have a good understanding of technology, and if they understand how to use the computer pretty well and are comfortable with using the computer, this could be a strong advantage for them. But if the thought of having a computer or the thought of having a computer on is something that scares them, this may be something that they may not want to do. And especially as rapidly as our technology continues to change, it has to be someone who's willing to stick with you as technologies change. And you as a therapist as well need to make sure you're staying up to date in this area. That the things that you learn in this training right now, you want to make sure you always come back and get updates to find out what new technology is going out there. That way you're finding out and doing the things that is up to date and the best for your clients. And so this is an area that both the client and the therapist need to make sure they're getting updated on. Another thing is that the need for online therapists to have special training. That when we think about all this training that you're going through currently, and also the continuing education units you'll need to have afterwards, this is something we have to take very seriously. That as more and more state boards of examiners begin to recognize the online counseling certification, as more and more boards begin to require this type of training to provide services online, you want to make sure you have the right type of training. That just simply going out and reading a book on how to do counseling online simply will not be enough. You need to make sure you're receiving training from people who have experience in this area. You need to make sure you're going out there and reading up in different journals and making sure you're doing everything that is new when it comes to technology. Because once again, just like everything else in technology, things do change, and you do not want to be left behind when it comes to doing technology and obviously doing it the right way. So make sure you continue to come back to get any type of continuing education units that you need. Continue to do some research on your own, but make sure you keep your licenses and all your certifications up to date, because this is a specialized area that needs special training. Also, something you have to be aware of and need to be ready for is the possibility of sudden, unexpected termination of therapy due to technological difficulty experienced by the counselor or the client. There have been times, even as I practice with some of my online clients, that maybe there'll be a problem with them. What if the power goes off in your house? How are you going to deal with that situation? What if your web camera ends up going out? Or if you end up losing your hard drive ends up going out on your computer? These are just some basic things that can happen on your end of the computer or also with your client. What if the internet service slows down during your session and you're not able to maintain contact during that? You need to make sure you have some type of plan outlined with your client so that they can be ready to respond and to know how to get in contact with you if that situation arises again. And so it's going to be extremely important to make sure that you are ready for therapy at all times. That once again, if technology breaks down on one end or the other, that it does not become something that's alarming to you. It's something that does not become alarming to the client, and it becomes something that both of you are very ready and capable of dealing with. Because if your client is, once again, doesn't know how to contact you, or if they're not really prepared for that, that could damage a relationship with you. The problem with technology is sometimes it simply does not work. Regardless of how much you spent on that laptop, regardless of how fast your internet services is, sometimes these things do not work and are not always effective. Imagine if you're doing counseling through your cell phone and your signal call gets dropped or your battery goes dead. Once again, you have to be prepared for that. And so I think it's important for us as ethical therapists to make sure on both ends we're both ready to deal with the situation if technology does not do what we want it to do. Also, the difficulty in dealing with client emergencies may arise from time to time. Imagine if your client gets deathly ill on the phone or through the internet as you're speaking with them. Once again, you want to make sure that you have a plan ready how you're going to deal with the situation as it occurs. How will you deal with it when your client talks about wanting to harm themselves or other people? And obviously, if as an ethical therapist, you're going to want to have plans in place already before the situation occurs. There may also be a situation where you are out of town and your client needs to get in contact with you. How will you deal with that in a technology assisted world? Will you simply make the information go to voicemail? Will you be able to schedule an emergency session? How will you be able to deal with? It is questions like these that therapists we need to make sure we're ready to handle and ready to answer. Because if we're not ready for these situations, our clients will not know what to do, and we could be putting their life or and their families' lives or others' lives at risk because we have not prepared for it. And so I think it's important for all of us as therapists to have an action plan ready at all times. Have important websites that you think your clients can use. Have those saved to a favorite list on your computer. That way you can access them at any time. Whether it's a crisis hotline or anything of that nature, you want to have all this information posted and close to you at all times. That way, if your client needs to have access to information, you will have it ready for them within a moment's notice. And I believe the more as a professional we can act in this area as therapists, the better prepared we will be in our sessions, and the more benefit our clients can get out of the sessions that we have with them. Also, another disadvantage or difficulty we see with technology assisted counseling is limited access to nonverbal cues. I would especially say especially as I think about email counseling and doing counseling over the phone, I can see those being two big issues there. And even when we use something as face to face, even something like Skype or video based type counseling, even though we're able to see their face, there may still be some small issues that we'll encounter because it won't be as clear as a face to face session. I think one of the foundations and building blocks of counseling is not only is empathy one of those building blocks, but being able to read nonverbal cues that our clients give off. And so if we're in an environment where we cannot see these nonverbal cues, we still have to be responsible for them. And so this may take a therapist who is doing counseling through the internet or through the phone. They may have to ask more questions. They may have to more and more times insert themselves into the conversation to ask their client how they're doing or if anything has changed with them, and which could be awkward for the client. But once again, this will be done for the client's protection. And so I think, once again, if we are not prepared for that or not trained to deal with that, then our clients, once again, can end up suffering for that. And so when we're not picking up on these nonverbal cues, what's going on with our client? And even if the video camera is there, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure we're picking up on everything and listening to them not only verbally but non-verbally if that situation arises. And also, the last point we want to make here is difficulty verifying client identity. Now, in the research that is out there, there is no clear one answer on how to verify client identity. I do want to give you some of my own thoughts, however. One major concern I have on dealing with on verifying client identity will be for the therapist who only sees their client in an online environment and has not met with them face to face first. My question would always be and remains to be, how do you know you're talking to the person you're supposed to be talking to? Let me give you an example. Say, for instance, you get an email from a guy named Gary. Gary wants to set up a counseling appointment with you. He wants to do it through email counseling alone. And so Gary will go ahead and pay you through the online environment. You have your money already. And he begins to send you emails about his life situation. Well, you're continue to respond back and forth with Gary about his life situation. You're giving him some things to consider. He's sharing more and more private information with him. And then later on in one of the sessions you have with Gary, Gary talks about the fact how he wants to end his life. Well, the problem now is, how do you know where Gary is located? How do you have the right information to know if this really is Gary, or if someone is logged onto their computer and is using their identification to communicate with him? And the answer is, you really don't know. And so I would send a strong, extremely strong warning to everyone who's wanting to do counseling through email only and without a face-to-face verification to be extremely careful in doing so. At least from my perspective, and in a perfect world, I believe the best way to approach this is with all clients. To have at least one face-to-face session with them before you begin online counseling. Now, I do realize this could be difficult for some clients to be able to do this, but I think for their best benefit, it will work out best. And so one way I can see doing this is maybe having your client meet with you face to face. They can drive in. We go ahead and get a copy of their ID. Go ahead and set that situation up there. We can also go ahead and confirm some type of password that you and your client will use every time you begin to log on into your sessions. That way it will help verify who they are at on time. I believe if a personal face-to-face visit is not always possible that first time, at the minimum, I would do something like Skype, which is a video-based type chat. Do that first. Maybe get that client to scan in and email you or fax you a copy of their driver's license or something to that effect, something that has a picture verification on it. I would do that first in order to find out who this person is before beginning the online relationship. In my personal and humble opinion, I believe to do anything short of that, you'll be putting yourself and your client at risk in the long term. And so I believe it's extremely important to do everything you can to verify your client identity. Also, although there is a lot of difficulty in doing this, I believe it is possible. Well, today we have taken a few minutes to look at some of the disadvantages and advantages of technology-assisted counseling. I hope the things that we have discussed today have given you some ideas to ponder on. If you have any questions about this, please feel free. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at renewedvision@hushmail.com. Thank you very much.